Hello and welcome to Off the Fence, a podcast where we deconstruct difficult decision making to try to figure out what keeps us stuck and, more importantly, how do we get unstuck? I'm your host, Karen Covey, a former divorce lawyer, mediator, and arbitrator turned coach, author, and entrepreneur. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Valerie Greene. Valerie is a unique relationship mentor, author, and speaker who helps women to inspire their man to fulfill their deepest needs and desires. A highly successful alternative to relationship therapy, Valerie helps women and couples create a secure emotional connection, not just problem solving or communication skills. Valerie holds numerous certifications in coaching, NLP, and emotional healing modalities. She leads workshops, retreats, and online courses for women and couples, and is the creator of the 12-week Manifest Lasting Love coaching program and the author of the book, The Commitment Roadmap, which teaches women how to inspire their man to commit to a lifetime of lasting love. And doesn't that sound amazing? Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Karen. It's really wonderful to be here, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I have to tell you, I love the title Manifest Lasting, the man in Manifest. I think that's so clever. And I want to get into your program in a little bit. But first, I'm curious, what drove you or inspired you or whatever, however you want to put it, to become a relationship coach? What's your why for doing what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much. I kind of look at my history as pretty unique, although, from some standpoints, it was really normal. I grew up in suburban Long Island to two loving parents, and, in a middle class background. So from the surface, it's pretty normal. Um, but I've always been incredibly emotionally deep and sensitive. And my parents, God bless them, they were together. They stayed together up until my dad passed a couple of years ago. They had a really good relationship for them. Um, and for me, I always felt lonely and isolated, and because I really needed somebody to give me empathy and space holding for my deep emotions and feelings. And my parents were very loving, but they showed their love through actions. And they did a lot of wonderful things for me. And they taught me a lot of wonderful things, including a lot of great principles about relationships, which is what it was that made their relationship, last for the rest of my dad's life. But at the same time, I never really even received empathy the way I define it until I met my ex-husband when I was 29. And it was a really funny moment because he was having a hard day, and I was trying to give him advice because that was my, parents' way of solving problems, is giving advice. And, a lot of times they give good advice, not, I think advice is good when it's called for. But I had always grown up feeling kind of confused because my dad was a rocket scientist, and he taught me to make all decisions from logic. And it's okay to have feelings, but feelings aren't a way to base any decisions on. It's okay to feel that way, but here's what you should do about it, or here's how you should analyze it. So that's just how I was raised. And, that's great. I don't knock that way of thinking. I think it's an important component. But for me, I had to really learn through all of my coaching trainings to make holistic decisions, like balancing the intellect with the emotions, with your intuition, and really learning how to tap into all three. And in my upbringing, I'd only really learned one. I was totally disconnected from my intuition. Everyone talked about gut feelings. I felt really inadequate because I didn't feel my gut feelings. I didn't know what that meant. Because just a lot of emotional repression, and I need to be feeling my feelings in order to feel my gut. I just was not really aware of my feelings. So when my ex-husband at the time, but this was when we were first dating, when he had a hard day and he said he needed empathy, I didn't even know what he meant. I was just like,
Wow.
uh, don't think about it that way. Think about it this way instead, which is how I was raised, with that your feelings are caused by thoughts. And he actually had to show me what empathy was, like, oh, that must have been really hard for you. What's that like for you to feel that way? What can I do to support you? Just
Well,
like really be with the emotions.
I hate to interrupt you, but how did you, all right, if you had no idea what empathy even was, how did you break your childhood pattern and start to actually feel it and experience it? Because experiencing feelings, especially for somebody who's not used to doing that, can be pretty scary.
I know, I know. That's what I'm talking about, that I had kind of an unusual upbringing because my dad, God bless his heart and his dedication, he was really abused as a child. And so he vowed to raise me differently than he was raised. And so he read all the parenting books at the time in the 70s that talked about make sure to validate your kids' emotions. And so my early childhood, like 0 to 3, I actually do remember. I'm kind of strange because I remember all the way back to I have memories from when I was 1 and 2 and 3, and I remember him teaching me about emotions and that it's okay to feel that way, and like this is sadness and this is anger, and it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be angry. And then when I got older and I started to have a personality, then we mostly just argued. 'Cause,
Ooh.
it was like he didn't do therapy, and like his wounding kind of came out, but he was always a good person with very good intentions. But so my early childhood, I actually do have a very empathic nature. I just suppressed it because I was also bullied because I was raised very differently than other kids. I wasn't allowed to eat sugar or listen to the same music that other kids listened to or watch the same TV shows, and so I'd wear the same clothes. So I was bullied, and so I shut down my emotions starting at around age 8, and I just kind of went up into my head and did really well in school and all that. But from my early childhood, I remember I was highly empathic.
Well,
And
how did you then
nature.
make that reconnection, right? To because this sounds like, and you're like your childhood might have been different, but a lot of people suffer from similar things where they repress their emotions, they
Mhm.
don't give themselves permission to feel, so to
Yeah.
speak. So how did you make that bridge between thinking and feeling so that you could start to reconnect to all of who you were?
Yeah, and I love that question because I had to actually study a lot of emotional healing modalities, and so that's one of the things that I help my clients with. Is to shorten the learning curve for them. I tend to attract a lot of other people who are kind of stuck in their heads and they don't know how to feel their feelings, because that was certainly me, and I realized that when I was 30 and I was dating my ex-husband because he was very emotionally available. So is my current husband. But it's like I was attracted to really high quality men. And so it's part of why I like working with single women and helping them. And the story with my ex-husband is on my website, and he even wrote me a testimonial because the reasons that we didn't work out were just not because we weren't emotionally compatible, but we weren't logistically compatible. So there's, we can talk about that. Um, but so I first started to realize that I needed to get in touch with my emotions when I was with him. And I realized that I didn't really know how to solve arguments other than arguing. Um, and, because that was what I learned from my childhood. And so it's funny, I first started with two modalities. And I later studied a lot of other emotional healing modalities, but the two that I started with were nonviolent communication, and a modality called focusing, which I know is not very well known. Um, but it's a kind of mindfulness meditation, is kind of how I like to call it. And I tried many different types of mindfulness meditation, but this one is about how to be with a felt sense and to get out of your head and to be with like how, because a lot of times when we're confused, it's not just one emotion, it's several emotions and it's several kind of parts of us, and we're conflicted. And so it's about how to kind of be with the entire felt sense of an issue.
So the question that I have is then, is it important that you name what you're feeling? Like, oh, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling anxious. Or is it more important, especially at the start, just to be with the emotions and say, I'm feeling a lot of stuff, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, so what the research shows, and there's many different studies around this, is that what's really important is that we what's called to differentiate or disidentify with the feeling. So that's what mindfulness is. It's saying, I am noticing something in me that's feeling this way.
Okay.
Um,
So are you noticing it like, oh, I feel a sensation in my stomach or in my chest or in like, what is it that you're looking for that you can notice? Because for someone who's not used to saying, connecting with this feeling with this emotion, how would you even know what it was?
right, exactly. And that's a good point. So that's why I love both of those modalities as intro modalities, both nonviolent communication and focusing, because nonviolent communication actually has a cheat sheet of like a whole list of feelings that are actually feelings. And they have further distinctions of words that seem like feelings, but they're not. Like manipulated is not actually a feeling. It's a, a thought and it's an accusation. So if I say I feel manipulated to someone, they're going to feel accused. And so it's like I feel scared, I feel hurt. Or hurt is sort of like a gray area, but you would say I feel pain if you really don't want it to seem like an accusation. But we're not going to get nitpicky here. Feelings are something you can see on someone's face, like sadness, anger, fear. Even jealousy and envy kind of looks like you can kind of, it's a combination of emotions, but in addition to joy and happiness and contentment, you can see those feelings. You want to feel the positive feelings too. I don't want it to seem like it's just about feeling unpleasant feelings. But so if you're more intellectual and you want a cheat sheet because you don't even know what you're feeling, I love the cheat sheet of nonviolent communication. I think it's kind of a misnomer, to be honest, because it was coined in the 1960s during the desegregation movement in the South, which is why the founder called it nonviolent. But even later in his career, Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, said that he wished he'd called it compassionate communication because it's so much more, I think.
Yeah.
People like that term. They don't want to think that they're violent if they're studying it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think the term compassionate communication would work. I mean, it just sounds like it would work so much better in a marriage or a relationship that doesn't involve like physical abuse. When you say nonviolent, I think physical abuse, but you
Mhm.
know, a word is what a word is. But it sounds like you do a lot to help your clients reconnect with their own emotions. So what my question is how does that help? We're going to talk specifically about a woman. How would that help a woman find the right relationship or be in the right relationship with the right man instead of choosing someone who is emotionally unavailable or emotionally incompatible or what have you?
Yes, exactly. I love that question. I want to just finish answering the previous question, which is that what the research shows is that it's important to differentiate from the emotion, but you don't have to know exactly what the emotion is. But if you want to know what it is, you can look at the cheat sheet. But if you don't
Okay.
know what it is, it's okay to say, I feel a tightness in my chest. I feel a lump in my throat. I feel a gnawing sensation in my stomach. And what the research shows is that actually helps you to then identify the emotion and then identify what you need. So you don't have to start knowing what it is. I just want people to not think that they need to know and then make themselves wrong if they don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification of the continued explanation because I think sometimes people like we all feel things that we don't know how to name sometimes.
Exactly. And that's what that modality focusing is about. And it's specifically, I know that it's another misnomer because people don't recognize the word focusing as a modality. They're like, I'm just not distracted. But it is an actual modality. You can look it up. There's several different, types of focusing. I prefer Ann Weiser Cornell's version, which she calls inner relationship focusing. And it's about being in relationship with these different parts of us that might feel different things and learning how to resolve inner conflict and make clearer decisions and feel your intuition. And so that starts with this understanding that a felt sense is more than just an emotion. It's like different parts of us, it's different feelings, it's different emotions, it's different desires, and it's learning how to make sense of it. But I love your question. Why does this matter? Right? Like, why should we, or why is it beneficial for, let's say, a woman? Although I think it's also beneficial for men, but I do mostly work with women. And so the reason why is, and it's hard to describe this with the research, but we can kind of intuitively know that it's true that we attract somebody who's about as emotionally available as we are, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, of course. I mean, it makes perfect sense on an energetic level and on a psychological level. It's like you can't handle something that's at a different place than you are a lot of times. Like, so that makes perfect sense to me. Which goes back to the question that I had about how can a woman who maybe is upset that she constantly seems to attract emotionally unavailable men. I hear that all the time from clients, right? It's the same guy over and over, and he just doesn't get me, and he's not in touch with his feelings, and blah, blah, blah. How do you break that cycle if you really want to get involved in a relationship that does connect with you emotionally?
Exactly. And so the way that I first of all like to teach women how to express their emotions, because it's one thing, it probably a lot of women are going to say in response to what I just said, but I am emotionally available. Right. And, I do feel my feelings. It's just that I keep attracting these men who are not. And so emotional availability, in my opinion, is not just whether or not we feel our feelings, although, of course, that's the first step. You have to be able to feel your feelings in order to be emotionally available. But it's also knowing how to connect to our needs. Um, and that doesn't mean that we're needy. And that's the third step, is how to express our needs without being needy. Because that's, I think, why we're scared to express our needs in the beginning of a relationship, because we're scared of being needy. But then if we don't express our feelings and needs in the beginning of a relationship, we can't tell whether a guy's emotionally available. And so then we'll get attached to someone who's not, because we don't want to rock the boat. And then by the time we realize he's not, we're already attached. And so it's learning how to express our feelings and desires in the beginning of a relationship and to see if the guy's emotionally available. But if we're expressing our feelings and desires in a way where we're making him wrong, because that's the way that we're taught to express our feelings, is kind of coming from a victim place rather than coming from an empowered place. And so that's kind of like the way that I define emotional availability, is not just that we're feeling our feelings, but that we're able to connect to our needs and validate our own needs. And of course, I can explain what that means and give examples.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would love that. But the question that I have first, and maybe this is part of the same question, I don't even know, but it's like, how do you do that? How do you start to express your needs right out of the gate, right in the beginning of the relationship, without coming off as needy, right? Because I
totally.
think that's what women are afraid of.
Right. And so the key distinction in my definition is whether we are in touch with how to meet our own needs first. And that is what it means to be emotionally available to ourselves. And if we're emotionally available to ourselves, then we'll attract a man who's willing to be emotionally available to us, and also express his needs and collaborate, and find these win-win solutions, even if what we need doesn't work for him. And so what that means is, like, I think it makes sense to come up with an example. So let's say, very common things that happen in the beginning of dating. A guy, let's say he asks you out and then he cancels at the last minute, or he asks you out and maybe we'll take somebody who doesn't, because that might be a guy who's not available, period. But a guy who's not emotionally available might show up and he might consistently date you. But let's say the conversation is superficial, right? Or let's say he doesn't call when he says he will. I think that's more common. Oh, I'll call you on Wednesday, and then he doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
and a lot of women think they're expressing their feelings about that, but they're doing so in a way that's making him wrong. Um,
Look, how? Can you give me an example?
yes, exactly. And trust me, this is what I used to do. So I had to really learn. And it's not just the modality of nonviolent communication, but what I call feminine communication, which is expressing your feelings and needs in a solution focused way, but you're still expressing them, right? Rather than in a kind of victimy way. So a victimy way would be like, the next time that he calls, you would be like, well, why didn't you call yesterday? You said you'd call yesterday and you didn't. That's just making him wrong. That's not sharing my feelings. I might say I'm angry because you didn't call yesterday. That's still sharing my feelings, but it's still making him wrong, right? um and so that's why it's important to be emotionally available to ourselves, because I then, if the not like he didn't call on Wednesday, so on Wednesday I would first probably feel scared, and then I would feel angry when I realized that he didn't call. But rather than blame him and say I'm angry because he didn't call, that's kind of giving my power away. That's being a victim, saying I'm angry because he didn't call. I'm not angry because he didn't call. I'm angry because I value integrity. Integrity is my need. I'm angry because I value, because integrity means doing what you say you're going to do. Or I'm angry because I value, connection, and I was really looking forward to connecting with him, and maybe he's not available. And then I'm scared that he's not available because I really want partnership, and I really want someone who's available. So it's I'm angry because I, not I'm angry because you. And I know that this is like I statements are communication techniques, but I'm feeling those feelings in my body, and then the way that I connect to my own needs is I imagine, what does integrity look like? What does it mean to me? Why is it important to me that somebody calls when they said they will? Because that's what's important to communicate to a guy
Okay,
is
so let me stop you right there. It's like, how do you do that? So it's you don't want to say, why didn't you call me? Or I'm mad at you because you didn't call me. What's the better way to do that?
yeah, exactly. So um when I work with my clients, I actually give them a 5-step formula in order to process their feelings. And, you can also call it channeling your feelings. It's feeling the feeling as a sensation in your body so that you can handle it, rather than have to react out of it. And then identifying the need, and then really connecting to the why of that need. Why is that important to me? And getting clear about that, so that then you can imagine kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt, but still expressing your feelings. So you're not making him wrong. So then when he answers, or when he calls the next day or 2 days from then, or whenever he does call, I might say, hi, how are you doing? And blah, blah, blah. Like, we'll have an initial connection, of course. And then I'm sure that there's a good reason why you didn't call, is how you start, because you're not, that disables his defensiveness. And I felt really concerned, because I want to make sure, like, that I value integrity, or, if that's not it for you, I really value connection. And when somebody says that they'll call and then they call, then I feel really happy to connect. And otherwise, I'm kind of anxious waiting by the phone, and I just don't like to feel that way. And so, you know, Are you okay next time if you text me if you can't call? What do you think about that? I always recommend saying, what do you think about that? Rather than how do you feel about that to a guy? Because feelings are traditionally feminine. Not that guys don't share their feelings, but if you ask a guy how he feels about something, just a lot of times he feels put on the spot. Whereas if you ask him what he thinks about something, he's likely to share. That's just what I find.
Interesting. That is such an interesting distinction, and I can totally see how that would work. That because the point is, whether you call it thinking or feeling, you want to get some communication going back. But like, why did you do or not do that thing? Right?
Exactly, exactly.
That makes so
And
much
I
sense.
actually have like so what I the formula that I just used, the inner work to process your own feelings is a different 5-step formula, but my free gift I call the Manifest Lasting Love e-guide. I have that 5-step formula that I used to just express my feelings and needs. So the first step is that you just establish this rapport, this connection. You don't like make him wrong right off the bat. The second step is that you validate his point of view, or that there must be some good reason why he did that. The third is that you express your feelings. The fourth is that you express your desire and you tell him what that desire provides for you, because men are providers. And so if he's the right man for you, he'll care about what your desire is or your need is. I kind of look at need, value, desire as being similar, and he'll want to provide it. And that's how you know if a guy's emotionally available, is how he responds when you share your feelings and desires without making him wrong. And then the fifth step is that you ask him what he thinks. And so I have that formula in my free gift if you want to post that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and definitely we will put links to the free gift underneath, in the show notes. But I have to ask you, what kind of a response are you looking for that would indicate to you that this guy really is emotionally available versus not? Like, what's a good response and what's a not so good response?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm assuming that you've been on a few dates with this guy, because I wouldn't have this conversation if it's like you've only been on one date. You're kind of like just observing what he does. But like, let's say you've been on 3 dates and he says he'll call and then he doesn't, but he calls a couple days later. So he's kind of investing in you. He's been asking you out. If he's the right guy for you, then I would expect him to be like, "Oh gosh, all right, yeah, that makes total sense. I will text next time that I can call. Yep, that you deserve that, or like I care about that."
Okay, that makes sense. So if the guy says, I assume then if somebody just blows you off or doesn't acknowledge your need or your feeling or what you just said, that, that's something that would be a not so great sign.
Yeah, I mean, I call that a pink flag. I mean, because if it's a pattern, I call it a red flag. If he just doesn't call once, like I don't really call that a red flag. I mean, people get busy, but if he responds in a really dismissive way,
Yeah.
like you're being controlling, or like let's say he's like, "Oh, come on, I called you today," like then
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say he's not emotionally available.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about manifesting lasting love. You talked about it a little bit and your free gift, which is awesome. And I recommend that everybody check out, go to the show notes, click the link and check it out. But what's that program about and why create it?
Thank you. Yeah. So I mean, I actually do create custom programs for people, but it's based on this template of 12 sessions. And that's just what I find, whether you're single and you keep attracting the wrong partner, or you're in a relationship and the guy won't commit, which is kind of another niche that this falls into, or you're married and the passion died, or you're caught in this push pull of recurring conflict. I find it takes about, you know, 3 months or 12 sessions in order to really turn the dynamic around. And so, first of all, there's the inner work. And if you're single, I find a lot of times the inner work, if you keep attracting the wrong guy, is also going back to your template from childhood. And this is coaching, not therapy, so it's not about dwelling there, but kind of like I shared, my parents showed their love through actions and through giving advice. That was my template. I thought that's what love was. That I do things for people and I give advice, um, and so that unfortunately is, not going to attract me the kind of partner that I want, just because I want to be the one whose feelings are cherished and adored, and who is, more of the feminine energy partner, which I can talk about, that where the guy is the one who does things and gives advice, let's say, and I'm the one who collaborates and who shares my feelings and desires and supports and enhances, like Alison Armstrong talks about. Not that I don't have opinions and share them, but it's more in a collaborative way where I share my feelings and my husband holds space for my feelings and helps me figure out what I desire and cherishes my desires. And so I had to learn how to be more feminine energy, and express my feelings and channel my feelings so that I can attract a guy that has more masculine energy. And so it's really about identifying what are the beliefs about love that you inherited from your parents or from your caretakers, and what are the skills that you learn about how to create the culture that you want in the relationship that you want. Do you have all the skills that it takes to attract the corollary? Because opposites attract. If I'm more feeling based, I'll probably attract someone who's more intellectually based. Is that what I want? Or do I want someone more balanced? And then I have to be more balanced. So it's learning how to identify what is the sort of unconscious blueprint that we inherited from childhood, and how do we reprogram our beliefs and learn the skills that we need in order to have the kind of culture that we want. And so in addition to learning the outer work of how to vet partners, which we sort of tried to talk about, like it's about you showing up and being really clear about your feelings and desires and learning how to tell if he has the qualities that you want before you get attached. So that's kind of the art of the 12-week program for single women. And then, I mean, it's similar if you're with someone who doesn't want to commit. It's similar in terms of learning how to really express your vision in a way that's not making him wrong, but that's sort of like inquiring as to whether he wants that too, and what is his timeline and what is his desire for the culture that he wants to create, and having those deeper conversations. Because that's where I find people are scared to rock the boat, but you have to be able to bring them up in a way that's feminine, not like kind of giving an ultimatum, but really being vulnerable about your vision. So it's kind of similar in that niche, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. But I know, having been single for a substantial period of time, when I was younger, I know that I had a lot of friends, and I'm thinking of one in particular who was dating some guy. I don't know if they probably were living together too at that point, but it had been 10, 15 years, something like that. She really wanted to get married and he wouldn't commit. So
Mhm.
at that point, like, how does somebody, okay, let's say they clearly didn't do the vetting they should have done in the beginning, but now you're in this situation. How do you figure out whether this person is ever going to commit?
Yeah, I know that's such a good question. Um, I've worked with quite a few clients in that situation, and my experience is, sometimes it really works to inspire the person because you just haven't gone deep enough. But sometimes in sharing, because this is the fear, that in sharing your deeper vision, it turns out he doesn't want the same thing. And then, you have to be willing to leave. And so, I mean, that's the first thing, is that people in that situation have to be willing to leave. And I think that, not that you're giving him an ultimatum necessarily, but that, you're willing to be courageous enough to say, not just I want to get married. Do you want to get married? But to go deeper in terms of the culture that you want to create and why you want to get married. Because I think a lot of guys are scared of marriage. I mean, you used to be a lawyer, so you understand. It's like men don't want to get taken advantage of, and the legal system still favors women in marriage when divorce happens. And men feel like, they're losing half of their finances, and the woman who they love turns really, confrontational, and they don't see the reason to get married unless the woman has a culture that she wants to create that's inspiring enough that he knows he can create more in life with her than on his own. um, and so in my book, The Commitment Roadmap, I talk a lot more about that dynamic and how to really inspire commitment in a man, because it is about, um, for example, like my husband actually didn't want to get married when we met. So I also share my own story in the book, The Commitment Roadmap. But it was really in helping him see um, why I wanted to get married, which was, first of all, like I see him and understand him better than anyone else ever has. And the depth of conversations that we have on a daily basis around, what was the best part of my day, and what am I feeling today, and what am I needing? And like, if he's in a bad mood, I know exactly what to say in order to help him feel better. And when I'm struggling and I want emotional support, he's so good at holding space for me. It's just I just feel so held. I mean, of course, if I express it in a way that's not making him wrong, because he has a lot of triggers against that. So if I make him wrong, then we're arguing. So like that's another way that I support couples if they're stuck in recurring conflict, is learning how to be vulnerable with each other instead and collaborate and find those win-win solutions. But that I was kind of sharing this vision for what it looked like for me to support his purpose and him to support my purpose, and what it really feels like to wake up in the morning and create the day together, and like, have these rituals together that make us feel really close. And when I was able to share that vision with him, he kind of came around and was like, you know what? I am warming up to the idea of marriage. I feel like this is something that makes me really happy. And I want to be able to wake up and look at you every morning and feel excited about the day together. And I know that you're not going to be happy if we're just living together without marriage, because that's not going to make you feel secure enough. And, so I was able to communicate all that to him in a vulnerable way, not a victim vulnerable way, but like in a way where I'm sharing what's important to me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, asking him what his blocks are and collaborating. So, for him, he really was scared of losing his freedom, because he'd been with women in the past where, as soon as he actually was engaged in the past, and it didn't feel right to him, and he wound up breaking it off, and he didn't even know why at the time. He actually didn't know why. He had already been broken up and had had a rebound relationship before he met me, but I helped him to understand why he didn't feel right with her. And it's just ways that they couldn't collaborate. And he was so attached to always finding this win-win that he never felt controlled, that I was never going to try to take away his freedom and force him to do things my way, because he did feel like that sometimes in the past. And he needed to see over time that I wasn't going to control him, and I was always going to like win-win or no deal, basically. And it takes sometimes, like, as not just one conversation, but sometimes several conversations, sometimes several weeks,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
months to like come up with that win-win solution to a complicated issue. And he wanted to know that I was going to be there, not to throw him under the bus to get my way, and I needed to demonstrate that over time in order for him to really feel comfortable. And so it's equally about being vulnerable about our feelings and needs and vision and culture and what that
Mhm.
provides for us. And of course, being willing to leave if he doesn't want the same thing after we communicate it in a really inspiring way. But then also figuring out what it is that he is concerned about and kind of demonstrating the opposite. And so I explain all of that in the commitment roadmap with examples and case studies and whatnot.
It sounds like a book well worth reading. And I could keep talking forever, but in the interest of your time and the listeners' time, if people want to learn more about you, I mean, we're going to link everything into the show notes, but if they want to learn more about you, your work, get your book, where's the best place for them to find you?
Thank you. Yeah. So my website is Coach Valerie Greene with an E.com. So that's CoachValerie.com. And there is a link to the book on, in the menus. Because it's funny, I did hire an editor to publish it more widely, but it's been published on my website since 2018 as an ebook. And it's
Awesome.
sold quite a number of copies that way. And so it's like I'm not really I'm kind of the bottleneck. I have to read through the manuscript of the second edition before I publish it more widely. But it's been out for about 5 years and um wait, 7 years at this point.
Time flies.
I know.
Time flies. But I really encourage anyone who is watching or listening, if this has resonated with you at all, go to Valerie's website, get the book, learn more about her work. There's a ton of stuff on the website, I'm sure, for people. So, Valerie, thank you so much for coming and for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, well, likewise. I love your questions and this has been really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And for those of you watching, for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you want to hear more episodes like this, do me a big favor. Give this a thumbs up, like, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of it makes a big difference in how we can, what we can communicate moving forward and how big the channel gets. The bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. I mean, not necessarily physically, but they get bigger. So, anyways, with that, thank you all so much. I look forward to talking with you again next time.